political earthquake in Wyoming that could have major implications for the midterms and beyond. Liz Cheney getting clobbered by Trump-backed candidate Harriet Hageman in the state's GOP primary by almost a 40-point landslide. But Cheney trying to spin the loss into a win with her eyes on national office.
That's a decision that I'm going to make in the coming months, Savannah. I'm not going to make any announcements here this morning, but it is something that I'm thinking about, and I'll make a decision in the coming months.
Former President Trump gloating over the loss of one of his most vocal political foes, calling Cheney a fool who should be ashamed of herself. But Cheney is throwing punches right back and promises to keep fighting.
I believe that Donald Trump continues to pose a very grave threat and risk to our republic. I am absolutely going to continue this battle. I think it's the most important thing I've ever been involved in, and I think it's certainly the most important challenge that our nation has faced in recent history, and maybe since the Civil War, and it's one that we must win.
Democrats and the media getting called out for mourning the loss of a Cheney, who was once a major villain to the left.
I don't think it's an exaggeration to say this is potentially as dangerous a moment for this country as we've seen at any time since the middle of the 19th century in the run-up to the Civil War.
It's about 39% of the electorate that want to replace the U.S. government, that want to throw away American democracy.
I respect enormously her commitment to democracy instead of her commitment to one man. That tells you a lot about the state of the Republican Party in this country right now, and how extreme and how devoted to Donald Trump it is.
So there are a lot of elements to this loss. Dana, I want to come to you about something that was just mentioned in that clip about Liz Cheney's commitment to democracy.
So I have a lot of thoughts. I was born in Wyoming, have family there, served with Liz, and of course worked in the White House when Dick Cheney was vice president. So all those things being said, like taking myself out as an analyst and looking at this. Okay, one thing Wyoming voters are hyper concerned about is Wyoming.
Right.
And there had been a lot of talk over the past year and a half that was one thing that she was not focused on. And it was permeating the entire electorate. Then you had the Trump pile-on. The disdain between the two of them is very real. Right. I would love for everyone to get along. That is just not the real world. And I could never run for office because I could not probably do all of the things that anybody running for office does. I think it takes a lot of guts. But when Ron Klain says that he admires her commitment to democracy, like actually that's what happened yesterday in Wyoming.
Yes.
It's democracy. And there was an election. There were a primary, and there was two different approaches to winning the primary. And the only question really was she going to lose by 30 points or 40 points? Right. And it turned out to be 40. I'm not sure of a constituency going forward in terms of running for president. That's obviously maybe premature, but I understand everybody wants to keep their options open for whatever happens. But I find it really hard to imagine that those media people that we just showed are going to vote for somebody who's for smaller government and low taxes. That's not why they respect her. And by then, there's not going to be probably a President Trump by then, because if he wins a second term and she wants to run again, I mean, that's like, if she runs after that, there won't be even a reason to do that. The other thing I would say is Wyoming it's a special place. It's a low population state, but there's a lot of people moving in there. And you see where in Jackson Hole, that's where almost all of the votes came from. The rest of the state is not Jackson Hole. And it's going to be an easy win for Hageman in November, and she will be the next Republican congresswoman from Wyoming.
Absolutely true. Judge, I want to talk to you a little bit about Harriet Hageman. She was a never-Trumper at the start. She called him a racist and a xenophobe, and then I guess, she found Trump culture, and now is going to be the new congressman from Wyoming. What do you think this election was really about? Did she win it, or did Liz Cheney lose it?
I think that when you look at these numbers, and I ran for office 5 times, I mean, Cheney got clobbered. She got clobbered. Wyoming said, we don't want any part of you. We don't want any part of your agenda. And remember, she outraised Hageman. I mean, she had a lot of money. She had a lot of support. She knew how to run. Hageman had only run once or twice before that. Hageman, in fact, had worked with Cheney. And the truth is that Cheney lost. And I think it's very interesting that she would actually think that she has a chance as a presidential candidate, because they can blow smoke all over her and tell her how wonderful she is and democracy right now is where it should be. But if you think the Democrats are going to support Liz Cheney, that's never going to happen. The truth is that they used her for their own agenda. They used her to trounce Trump, and Trump is just winning across the board, across the country. So I don't think there is a future for Liz Cheney. When you don't work for the constituents that you work for, but you assess that you are there for some higher political agenda, then you're not really a public servant. You're an ideologist.
Greg, to the judge's point about who she would represent, because I know everyone loves that phrase. So as a Democrat, I would not vote for Liz Cheney.
Exactly.
And I wouldn't vote for Andrew Yang either. Both of them would be third-party spoilers in this that would probably get more independents and probably conservative Democrats peeled off than Republicans. What do you think, and you have a lot of notes, I know you have things that you want to say, but start with at least the impact of the Trump endorsement and what you think that carryover to the midterms will be.
Okay. She compared this to the Civil War. She is nuts, okay? She is overtaken with such obsession and such emotional bitterness that she has this kind of grandiose view of herself, and it's actually now getting embarrassing. It's embarrassing for her. I wish she had a friend that could take her aside and say, you got to calm down. Don't run for office. You're not going to get a national office. At best, you're going to get Office Depot. The Republicans hate you. The Democrats don't want you. This is all driven by some emotional brokenness that happened from Trump. She goes all the way back to the Civil War. Of course, she didn't mention the Iraq War or the Afghanistan war because that cuts a little too close to home, or to Dad. So she goes back, and then she compares herself to Abe Lincoln. I mean, people say that Trump has an ego, but when he says stuff like that, it's usually with a wink, and then everybody's laughing. Yeah. There's nothing in her eye but spite. It's like it's such a personal vendetta from day one. And I get it. Trump had no use for the Cheneys, and the Cheneys had no use for Trump. I get it. But the party has moved on from this sort of thing. She hasn't. We've heard about this. It's the struggle is to the Civil War. We've been told it's the end of democracy. Trump supporters are evil. Adam Kinzinger said that 2 days ago. He said Trump supporters are evil, and she's fighting evil. How is that not incitement? You can't criticize the FBI, but you can smear millions of people because Orange Hitler, right? And I guess she does have something in common with Abe Lincoln. They both allowed theater to kill them, and her theater was January 6th. And I don't know what she's going to do next, but I would consider taking a break. Do not listen to Democrats. Do not listen to the media, because they're just going to use you. I think she's starting her own PAC, which is hilarious. But normal people don't get that emotional over this stuff. And I think that she needs somebody should just pull her back and go, look, everybody's moved on except for you. It's time. Maybe that's me. Maybe she's listening to me. Maybe I could be her friend. Maybe
her new top advisor.
Yeah, I could be part of her PAC.
It's going to play well.
Sean, quickly on the most critical issue in this campaign, which was election denialism, the big lie. And when you look ahead to the midterms in the battleground states, 2/3 of the GOP nominees that have made it through their primaries deny that President Biden legitimately won this election.
But I think when you look at this race, Jessica, and this goes to a point that Dana made, this is about Wyoming, right? And Dick Cheney came out with an ad for Liz, and it was all about Donald Trump. He said nothing about Wyoming. So if you're going to run to say, hey, I want to represent you, I want to make your life better, that's what politics is about. How do I make your life better? But inflation is raging in a rural area where I was from in Wisconsin. Gas prices crush people who are in the middle class. She did nothing to fight for those issues for them. And if you're going to run for higher office, you have to have charisma. She has no charisma. I served with her. Listen, she's a drip. She's smart, but she's a drip. She's going nowhere. She might run for dog catcher and probably wouldn't win, but she's not running for president. And to talk about the threats to the country, I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, you might not like Donald Trump. Yes, January 6th happened. But when you look at, politicizing the DOJ, we had 10 terrorists that we know of that came across the border last month alone. There are real risks that are happening. We're going to spend ourselves into oblivion We're going to see hyperinflation. Those are all issues that affect families that Democrats are driving that I think should be addressed. And to say that Donald Trump is the problem, I think she's missing the boat. And to just one last point, to your point, Democrats used her to drive a narrative on Donald Trump. Think of John McCain. John McCain thought the left loved him too. He was going to run and Democrats going to come and support him. Once John McCain ran for president, they threw him out and they attacked him. And by the way, where was the media saying Joe Manchin is full of courage? We love Joe Manchin, supporting democracy. They attacked Joe Manchin when he stood up to Democrats. But oh gosh, we got a Republican that'll stand up to other Republicans, and they're for democracy and they have courage. It's all garbage.
Couple things. So the Inflation Reduction Act reduces the deficit by $300 billion, and duly noted that you did not want to talk about the big lie.
Oh my God.
That was wrong.
Don't CBO me. CBO. The big lie. All right.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.